Good evening. My name is Kimberly Jackson, and welcome to a program that we're honored to do with the Chamber of Commerce here with Barry Rubin, with our amazing dignitaries and mayoral leadership, and for our beautiful beaches, for our dignitaries who have come and who are in the audience, and most importantly, for our college, the Institute for Strategic Policy Solution, which is our think tank embedded in the college. My name is Kimberly Jackson, and I'm the executive director, and I'm honored to always work with our leaders on behalf of Congressman Bill Young. Congressman Young really sought to make sure that people understood the appropriate scope of government, that we worked together and had conversations that our leaders could utilize when they're making decisions. And tonight we're doing the State of the Beaches. So we have an in-person audience. So if you see us pivot a little bit, that's why. And we're honored to have you. All of our programs are recorded and on our website, which is isps.spcollege.edu. You will have a text option, and you will be able to text your questions to that on your screen. It should say SBC Seminole 776-22333. I want to take one more opportunity to say thank you to Robin and to the entire city staff and to everyone who came together to make this a reality, but most importantly for allowing our college to work with your community. As I say before, St. B College has students all across the area, from North Tarpon all the way down here, and what we do as a community matters when we do it collectively. With that, I'm going to say again special thanks to Barry Rubin, who's going to introduce our dais, and also special thank you to Al Rochelle, who is very supportive of the Institute and is just a community servant. So I want to thank you before we begin. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Kim. And again, SBC is a great partner and a great member of the Treasure Island Madeira Beach Chamber of Commerce. And without them, we wouldn't be able to put programs like this on, and we have a few more planned down the way. So we're very excited to be here. I'm going to introduce you to our dais, but again, just for our folks watching at home, if our elected officials would stand, please, and we could recognize them. I know Councilman Michael Fredovich from Gulfport is here, Commissioner Blackburn from Reddington, North Reddington Beach, right? And I missed one. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Toth, of course, from Treasure Island is here as well. We also, hi there. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner's here as well. Also just want to say a quick thank you to Chris Yates is somewhere here. He's the Executive Director of the Pinellas Park Chamber of Commerce. We work a lot with Chris hand in hand. I saw Amy Davis come in. Amy's the City Manager at Treasure Island. So welcome, Amy. And I think that is everybody who was besides all of you. So we really especially thank all of you. So let's introduce our panel of folks. Of course, you know Al Rochelle for the decades of service he's put on the Channel 9. I've spent many evenings with Al watching him, and especially on the presidential nights, watching him change that board over and over again. Yeah, pulling our hair out of our head. So you know Al. He's going to do a terrific job tonight. And then starting with Mayor Queen, our first Mayor Henderson, Mayor Payne, our second Mayor Henderson, Mayor Hendricks. We all know Mayor Hendricks. He's our host tonight. We thank him very much for the use of this lovely space.
Got it wrong up there, by the way.
Did I mess it wrong?
Yeah, the picture's wrong.
Oh, yes.
There you go.
Mayor Johnson, who looks more like Mayor Johnson than Mayor Hendricks does. And then, of course, Mayor Will. And so we'll get that switched for you. We'll get that fixed. That's we don't know why we did that. So we're going to turn this over without further ado. Less of me and more of them is really why you're here. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rochelle, and I'm going to sit down and shut up.
There we go. There we go. Well, thank you all for being here. Kind of fun to be talking politics again. Well, sort of. I don't know. That's why I retired in 2019. I didn't want to be around in 2020 for all that craziness that was going on. Anyway, we're really glad to have you here tonight. We only have an hour and a half to work this, so it's you won't get all of your questions answered tonight. We'll do the best job that we can. This isn't like a debate. We're not keeping a clicker. But one thing I will do, because, you know, they all have the same first name, Mayor. Yeah. So what we're going to do is I'll call out the name of the person that I'd like you to respond to each one of these questions, and that'll rotate back and forth. The only exception is that Bill Queen has to get out here because he's got real business coming up with his people. And and you do too, Mary Beth Henderson also. So I'll give them an opportunity to speak to these questions to begin with. Already we're seeing a couple of questions here. I will kind of filter these questions because some of these are going to be answered in our conversation. And this is very much meant to be a conversation, so just keep your microphones up and we'll just talk about things and go as long as we can. So let's start out at the very end, just a brief introduction of your city. And I want you, because I'm going to incorporate this question with another one, an introduction of your city. And if I could point with one biggest concern, what is your biggest concern for that particular city? And Bill, will start with you for North Reddington Beach.
Yeah, North Reddington Beach is 1 mile of beach between the Reddingtons. There's 3 Reddingtons, and we're right in the middle. I think our biggest concern right now is the beach renourishment, or the lack of, from the Army Corps of Engineers. We're really worried about that. We've got a lot of beach erosion, and that's our #1 concern.
Okay, Mary Beth, same thing with you.
Mary Beth Henderson. I've been on the commission since 2014, the mayor since 2018. We're about the same size, about a mile long on Gulf Boulevard. We have about 2,500 residents, and I think one of our main concerns is if we have red tide, how we're going to be dealing with it.
Okay, now, they didn't sit you in any particular order, so my order here is going to be really whacked. So when I call you by your name, just give us the same thing. Just briefly, your city and what you think the #1 concern is, and we'll likely come back and talk about that #1 concern. John, go ahead.
Well, one of the main concerns is something that really affects all of us, traffic. And that's one I don't know how we're going to deal with, frankly. It's a tourist area. I will say to some people that have moved here expecting not to have any traffic, you probably moved to the wrong area. But we've done a few things like getting a timer put on the Tom Stewart Causeway so that bridge isn't opening every 5 or 10 minutes. It opens on the half hour now if needed. We can't do that on the Johns Pass Bridge because it's an inlet and you can't have it on a timer at all. That and managing our growth, that's a big concern. People are putting it out there that we're wanting 10 and 12 stories, condos and hotels all up and down the beach. Simply not true. In fact, we were in discussions last night at our meeting. The height is 34 feet. So if you can get 10 stories in 34 feet, I'd like to know how you're going to do that. So there's been misinformation put out there. A lot of misinformation, rumor mills going on. I'd like to see that stop.
Okay, Tyler, same question for you. Biggest problem, and introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Mayor Tyler Payne. I've been the mayor for a year. I've been on the commission since 2018. It's my pleasure to serve as the mayor. I was born and raised in Treasure Island. My grandparents moved there in 1970, so I'm third generation Treasure Island resident. Treasure Island, we have about 7,000 residents and almost 4 miles of beachfront. So I like to think it's the best beach town in Pinellas County, but I think my colleagues would probably disagree with me. So just happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, Alan, same question for you.
Oh, yeah, my name's Al Johnson. I've been the mayor of St. Pete Beach for 5 years now. I've lived there 24 years. We are a good bit bigger than some of the other folks up here. We're about 10,000 residents, and at any one point in time, we got 10,000 snowbirds and sometimes as many as 30,000 tourists. So we can be a 50,000 person place or 10,000, depending on the day of the week and the time of the year and everything else. So it's a bit of a challenge. I think we've been working a lot on spending money on our infrastructure, primarily our sewer system, but also roads and everything else. But we're making progress there. The thing that worries us the most is stuff we really don't have a lot of control over, and that's sea level rise and climate change. You know, we've got 4 consultants working on different areas of the city, and they meet once a month, the 4 of them, with our staff to determine how they can work together to try and take a look at what we need. We've got a plan that goes out to 2050, and we've got a lot of stuff on, and the sea level rise issue is way beyond our ability from a financial standpoint, so we're going to need a lot of help. Thank you.
All right, David, for you.
My name is David Will, and I am lucky enough to be the mayor of Reddington Beach. I'm in my first year right now. I was on the commission for 10 years prior. I've lived in town 30 plus years. We have about 1,500 residents, 1,100 homes. We are unique as a beach community where we are completely residential. And our residents have made it clear to me that they want to stay that way. So our biggest concern is short-term rentals. We're afraid of our beautiful residential, quiet, sleepy community turning into a hotel district.
Okay, and Samuel.
Mayor Sam Henderson, City of Gulfport. We are a little bit unique up here on this panel because we are a bay beach. We're on Boca Ciega Bay as opposed to the Gulf. So the tourism that we see is a little different than what you see because they're mostly not coming for our beaches. They're coming for kind of little old Florida charm that Gulfport still manages to hold on to. We're about 12,500 people. Again, we get a good snowbird population, so we're probably closer to 14 right now, and they'll start filtering out soon as those temperatures go up. But I'd say we've probably got a tie between the concerns in my community, which is managing the scale and the type of growth, and also environmental stewardship and how we're going to cope with that going forward. Because when you've got this many people, 24 cities in Pinellas County, that's a lot of urbanization, a lot of impact on a coastal environment. And when it comes down to it, I think one thing we'd all agree on up here that once you're not talking about Disney and the theme park set, Florida's wealth is in its waters. So those are things we have to take care of in order to be that place that people want to see.
Now, I did get to everybody, correct? Okay, good. So let's talk about the legislative session in 2022. I was going through some of these things, and you gentlemen and ladies are much more acquainted with whether you won or you lost in the legislature. So let's start with that particular topic. And Bill, let's go with you. Did anything happen in the legislature worthwhile that you were talking about?
Let's go back the past 10 years, and we're losing every year. 2022 is Senate Bill 620. It's a litigious bill that's going to cost the city's money based on businesses deciding that the city passed an ordinance that affects their business and they can sue the cities. It's really a problem, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. We've been dealing with this for years. It's one thing after another. If it's not short-term rentals, it's something else. They're taking away, Tallahassee is taking away our home rule where we represent all these people out here. They take away our ability to do that, and it just infuriates us.
Right. Mayor Beth, same thing for you.
100%. It's definitely the erosion of home rule, and we believe that the best government is the people that are closest to the people. The people in Tallahassee have no idea what's going on in Redington Shores.
So when we say home rule, did this thing get out of whack because of COVID? I mean, because some of the legislation that was passed was in reaction to other things that had happened in the area.
COVID had nothing to do with it. It's been going on for 10, 15 years.
We've
Okay.
been fighting it forever.
Okay. Tyler, same thing to you.
Echo their sentiments. I made a couple trips up to Tallahassee this year to speak with our legislators, and it's just, I think it's cities that aren't here in Pinellas County that are causing the issue, that are passing a lot of ordinances that our state feels that they need to swoop in and override what other cities are doing. The problem isn't here, but we're suffering the consequences of because of some of the decisions that are being made in cities in South Florida and other places around the state. So one win that we did get, I think, was the derelict vessels. They passed legislation that allows us to clean those up a lot easier. We fortunately didn't have many in Treasure Island, but I know a lot of my colleagues have really suffered with that, and our sheriff acted very quickly, and along with Representative Cheney, they were able to clean up over 30 derelict vessels from around the county. So I consider that a big win this year.
Okay. Alan, for you, legislative wins or losses?
I agree with Mayor Queen that we, one of the big surprises that I've had since taking this job 5 years ago is I had no idea I'd be so concerned with what's going on in Tallahassee, because every time you turn around, they're trying to take control away from us. And one thing I found out to be absolutely true that the people in Tallahassee that make up these rules don't understand is that I was told don't ever go to Publix without buying your ice cream last, because you'll melt it before you get out of there.
Oh.
Yeah, because everybody knows you, and you have to answer questions, and you've got to respond to things like he's talking about when we get our hands tied, and that, to me, has been the biggest surprise of my being in this position.
Okay. David, same question.
I would agree, of course, home rule. The Florida State Constitution gives municipalities the ability to govern themselves. And with each session, they take a little piece of that away. So it'll come to a point where I don't know why we would come and turn the lights on.
Okay. Samuel?
Thank you for bringing up One Ray of Hope. That has definitely been something that's helped us with the derelict vessels and the path forward, moving faster to get those removed. The home rule issue is a big one. I think no community knows more. No one knows more about the community than the people who live there. And I think that in many different ways, some of the folks that make those rules, it may be a rule that fits some communities, but not all communities. And so when you do things like preempt the ability to manage, like you were saying, short-term rentals, to manage making rules and regulations regarding plastic, styrofoam, things like that pollute our waters. When that's taken away, our ability to do our jobs is severely diminished. So I appreciate you bringing up something positive in this one, but in general, I do feel like every session, even though we do have some folks up there that work very hard and try to make reasonable rules, a lot of the stuff that's preempted from our control are things that have long-term damage, and even things that are beyond the coastal stuff, like regardless of what your opinion is, that with the Don't Say Gay bill and other things that really reach into the partisan stuff, when people see that on national news outlets, I think it tends to make some people feel unwelcome in a place where we kind of rely on them coming to see us and hopefully making them feel welcome and want to have a good time here.
Okay, John, same question.
Bill 620 is a concern to all of us. That's one thing I like about the Big C is the mayors get together and we discuss common problems. So I have to just mirror what everyone else has said on that. The other things are derelict vessels. Representative Cheney was instrumental in getting rules changed on that to where we can actually start getting boats out of here after 21 days. Madeira Beach had 22 derelict vessels removed. And the other big issue in Madeira Beach is not a lack of sand and needing beach nourishment. We've got too much sand. As they nourish the beaches north of us, we have beach groins. They were put in 1957. In all these years, not once has Madeira Beach gotten beach nourishment. The problem with all that sand migrating south is that it is coming into the pass. And it's closing up Johns Pass gradually, as it's doing in Blind Pass. And as Blind Pass is filling in, it puts more pressure with currents on Johns Pass with that water moving in and out of Boca Ciega Bay. So we've needed help on that. That's been a big, big issue. And actually, the legislature helped us out with this through Representative Cheney. She's been literally a rock star, I think, for a number of these communities. She got the city $1.55 million for dredging of Johns Pass. Now, it passed legislature, but it's still got to go across the governor's desk. So we hope it doesn't get vetoed. So those are big issues that we've got going on.
So one of the things, here's the L word, lobbyists. Do you have you mentioned the Big C. I don't know does anybody know what the Big C is? You all do, but explain it to me. I heard you talking about it too, but in terms of who do you have? Because when you go with your individual voice, I mean, the reality of it is you're not going to get heard. But if you go as a group, does that help at all? And tell me about the Big C. Anybody?
Actually, the Big C is the 11 Barrier Island communities. We include in that Clearwater, even though they're a mainland city, but they've got a pretty substantial beach, so we let them in. But without Clearwater, we're the third biggest city in the county, behind St. Petersburg and Clearwater. Mm-hmm. So, and we're the economic engine of this place. I have one of our, I don't know, it was my constituent or somebody from, I think it was a guy that lives in St. Petersburg, took the tourist development tax, the bed tax, and I generate just a tad less than Clearwater, and more than St. Petersburg, just in our little 2.25 square miles city. But if you do it on a per capita basis, based on your population, I'm number one. Treasure Island is number two, actually, and I'm 4 or 5 times Clearwater and 20 times St. Petersburg. Mm-hmm. So this whole group here is the economic engine of the county. Last year, 2001, we had 21. We had 4 of the Barrier Island beaches were named in the top 20 beaches in the country, all in this county. Mm-hmm. And that tells you, well, we got something here that people want to come to. So.
Yeah. Let's, Kara, I want to dig a little bit deeper on these infrastructure problems. So you say that there are problems. Historically, how did we get in this situation now? Because we have a big county, and I know there is some cooperation between all of you. We've had some disagreements about how much cooperation there is and whether they're really doing their fair share. But in terms of the way these individual cities were put together, did they all just have their little own infrastructure? Is there a major tie-in? Because I saw in terms of how much it was going to cost some of you folks to try to get hooked up to the county sewer system, or whether different cities, I think Bel Air is having a problem with their own power generation now and trying to figure out what they're going to do. So how did we get into this position, and do you see a way out of it?
Well, there's a lot of cities that started with their own systems, and they have sold their systems to the county. That's how they got out of it. So the county picked up the crux of the money to fix their problems. We've got a sewer lift station going in our town that's $5 million that we sold to the county 10 years ago. It's a 30-year life. The life's up. They're going to replace it. On top of that, they're building a new emergency services building for the Reddingtons, which is a great thing. So we've got a $10 million addition from the county helping us out. So there is a good partnership with the county working with us on all these systems.
When we see all of the roads that are being dug up, I'm going from Clearwater on down because I ride my bike a lot up and down here. I've been hit 4 times, folks. I'm still alive. That's pretty good. Destroyed 4 bikes, but here's the good thing about it is when they destroy an old bike, I upgrade, you know. I got a $4,000 carbon fiber thing that I'm waiting for them to destroy now. But in terms of the way I see the roads when they're dug up. Now, is Pinellas County in charge of all of the roadways, or do you in each municipality have to sit down with them and they go, oh yeah, we're doing a sewer line, because the big deal up in the Clearwater aspect of it was stormwater problems. So how does that work?
To anybody?
Anybody, yeah.
Yeah, it's for us, we have county roads that run through our city. So anything we do, and I know it's the same for a lot of us up here, if we're doing something that involves a change to a county road, it's got to go through the county. We can make requests and recommendations, and we can work with them to do it. But in the end, if it's a county road, it's not uniquely up to us. But there are the other roads are our choice, at least as far as Gulfport goes. And then there's roadways that we share, like our boundary on 49th Street between us and St. Petersburg. So you have a mix of which ones are county that you have to go through and which ones are yours 100% to manage. So it's usually a combination. And I know with y'all dealing with Gulfport Boulevard all the
And
way
we
up
have
and down.
Gulf Boulevard's a state road, so we have to deal with the Florida Department of Transportation on projects there. But in Treasure Island, and I assume other cities, we're responsible for the sewer system, so we have to coordinate with them. And the state has been, while their home rule is constantly under attack, they have been a good partner for us with some of those projects. We, this year, have 2 really big infrastructure funding requests that have been granted and are waiting on the governor to sign. We have $1.5 million coming for a new master pump station that pumps 1.4 million gallons of sewer out to St. Petersburg every day.
Wow.
So it's just kind of crazy to think that that's how much is going out, but it's a very key part of our infrastructure that needs to be paid attention to. So we thank all of our residents and our visitors for the patience with when we do have that work going on Gulf Boulevard. It's to preserve our way of life on the beaches.
No, go ahead.
I would want to reiterate what Tyler was talking about, because we have a similar case. We don't have any county roads. We've got one big state road, and that's it. Everything else is our own. And similar setup with the, in fact, we share a sewer line back to St. Petersburg, because we pay them to treat our sewer, much like Treasure Island does. But with that being said, we have spent somewhere in excess of $35 million in the last 5 years doing road upgrades and sewer system upgrades, even though our sewer system is a transportation thing. We get it off the island, get it to St. Petersburg, and they charge you to treat it. We actually, part of our city is on the, a little finger that's on the north end of the causeway Corey Causeway, that comes over from South Pasadena. It's part of St. Pete Beach, and the reason is there used to be a treatment plant there. The state won't let you put a treatment plant on a barrier island anymore, which is one reason they came up with the sewer system. And so nobody wanted the mess that they had, the ecological mess, so they built condos on it, and we still have it. So I've got a few constituents out.
The one thing that you might point out about the construction on Gulf Boulevard is the beautification project that has been partnered with the county. They've given us $70 million over the last 15 years to underground all the utilities on Gulf Boulevard. So a lot of what you're seeing is that work going on. And FDOT runs the road from about Indian Rocks south. Indian Rocks north is the county. So Gulf Boulevard north is the county up that way. So a lot of that construction you're seeing is that project in place and being worked on.
Right. Let's talk about climate change and in terms that people can understand. Because unfortunately, I used to do a political show and I don't know how they get sidetracked in trying to deal with the public, but we completely do one way or another, whether you believe in it or not, or I'm not even going to go there. But in terms of when we talk about climate change, are we basically talking about flooding? Is that the number one concern that we have with climate change, rising sea levels, and whether it's going to happen tomorrow or going to happen 20 years from now? And then as I drive up and down this roadway, and I swear that every time there was a rainstorm in Pinellas County, I can tell you where it's going to flood. I know in my head because I've driven these roads, and it's always the same thing. In your planning for climate change, are you ever going to be able to get ahead of the picture? Because you can't automatically raise all of Pinellas County and all of these areas. Let's just raise everything up 5 feet, and then we'll be all right for about 50 years. So how are you dealing that in a realistic way without people saying, well, you're not doing enough, climate change, climate change, climate change? And let's just start, David, with you, and we'll just work our way around.
Well, any new construction is required to be elevated, of course. We are on a barrier island, so there are some limitations there. We have some areas you've mentioned that are traditionally low in town. So anytime we get a storm or any type of high tide, these areas become flooded. One of our infrastructure projects we're doing right now is to put these check valves in our storm drains to prevent the high tides from coming back up into the street. I know Bill uses them and Mary Beth uses them, and they've spoke very highly of them, so we have them coming to our town. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we can do to try and help the water or stop the water from coming into those low elevations. But anything over the seawall or anything over your finished floor elevation, you're going to get flooded. We are on a barrier island.
And it's only going to get worse.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Same question for you. Move down the line.
Yeah, we have a similar problem, but one of the things we've done is, and that's the biggest immediate thing we can do to mitigate the climate change issue, but we've taken a different approach to stormwater. And we found out that we have sunny day flooding in several areas of our city. You have a king tide every, 3 months? It comes up through the drains. So we now concentrate on getting rid of keeping salt water out rather than letting fresh water get out. Because you'd rather drive your car through fresh water than salt, and you don't want salt water will ruin your lawn, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So much like David was saying, we put in a lot of upgraded drain systems when we've done all these street projects, and we continually do them, and every time we do one, we put in baffle boxes and check valves for the sewer, and so we're cleaning the sewer, the stuff that runs off the street that gets into the bay, that gets cleaned as well. But the check valves are huge, and it has helped. Mm-hmm. But we do have areas that aren't done yet, and every time somebody complains about it, I say, well, you bought a house at sea level, it's kind of hard for us to make the water flow uphill, so we're trying.
Yeah. John, same thing to you.
One thing we're doing is the life of a seawall is approximately 25, 30 years. We're going to start requiring when new seawalls go in that they're raised by 1 foot. And initially, that really isn't going to do you any good if your neighbor's is lower. But over the period of time, as everybody is replacing their seawalls, gradually we will be raising the entire seawalls in the city to where the city basically will be a foot higher. Another big problem we're having with flooding, I don't know that it's really sea rise, but Johns Pass has shoaled up so much. And when we get a storm coming in, waves are breaking not only into Johns Pass, but actually we've had waves breaking under our boardwalk. With all that sand that we have come in there, our outfalls to the streets are filling with sand. The streets are flooding because they're plugged. And another reason we have got to be able to get something done with the sand issue at Johns Pass. And I saw Representative Cheney come in. Hi, Linda. And I will say it again, I said it earlier. She has been so good for all these communities in what she's done and getting, I think, a total of $26 million this year alone to help all of us small communities, because a small town, Madeira Beach is under 4,000. We can't do a lot of these things on our own. We've got to have some help, and keeping my fingers crossed that everything gets signed off in Tallahassee.
Sam, same for you.
We've been working on several things because we're one of the few places in Boca Ciega Bay. It's a very limited number of places that have an area of Boca Ciega Bay that's not seawalled, and our beach is one of those. And it's really only a little over a quarter-mile stretch, that in Clam Bayou to our east. So we just engaged with the Department of Environmental Protection, got a $175,000 grant with them to do a living shoreline. So we're trying to do things that are more working within the contours of natural vegetation as opposed to seawalling, because there's when you seawall everything, then you're kind of taking away access, and so you don't want to take your beach away by seawalling it in. So we're trying to do things that are more on the resiliency side of, you know, taking advantage of mangrove, seagrasses, using things like riprap and natural materials to break any of that wave velocity, because it's not just the fact that that water is slowly rising as we take more fixed carbon out of the ground and release it, you know, through combustion into to make CO2 in the atmosphere. But it's also the fact that not only are sea levels rising as we warm with CO2 absorbing that radiant energy, but we're always also having storm intensification. So the warmer it gets, the more, and you know from being in the news all those years, the more intense storms get, and you start seeing things like Harvey becoming nearly a Cat 5 in just a matter of 2 days. Hurricane Michael that took out Mexico Beach. So not only are we seeing water levels rise, which give us bigger storm surges, and of course here we tend to keep getting these storms right when we're at a high tide, you know, which really helps. But also the fact that you're going to have more intense storms, more unpredictable storms, a larger number of storms in a given hurricane season. So it's not just that sea level rising, it's also that wave action and what you can do to mitigate it. And again, as you said, when you're living at sea level, there's only so much you can do. And it's going to change the face of our neighborhoods as we have to start building to FEMA regulations and be above that base flood elevation that they dictate to us.
Right.
Because someone, say, living in a little bungalow in Gulfport, you say they get washed out in the next storm, they can't build back what they had there before, and highly likely they wouldn't have the money to build what's required. So it's going to change how our waterfronts look all over this county.
Yeah, Tyler, same thing to you.
Yeah, largely the same as the other communities. We have adopted a watershed management plan that is going to, over the next 50-plus years, it calls for raising our seawalls, raising our roads, and then raising the properties in between. And right now we have a challenge with our comprehensive plan and our land development regulations that forbids any properties from bringing any fill into our city. So we're working on changing that so that people can bring in fill to raise their properties up and comply with our watershed management plan, because that's really how it's going to get done. And we're also implementing or building a living shoreline. We received over $1 million in grant funding from the state and the Tampa Bay Estuary Program to build a living shoreline around our golf course, Treasure Bay Golf Course, which is right on the Intercoastal Waterway. And we were looking at about $1.8 million to replace the seawall there. Instead of replacing it with a seawall, we're replacing it with all the things that Mayor Henderson spoke about with the living shoreline. So those types of shorelines are more resilient and more able to deal with what nature deals out, because it's more natural.
Yeah.
We're doing other things, like we're working towards being a LEED certified city. We have electric vehicles charging stations throughout the city, and working on things in our comprehensive plan, which is being actively rewritten right now to actively combat issues with the environment.
Yeah. Mary Beth?
We've adopted an ordinance recently to raise our seawalls, just like everybody else is talking about. We've also added freeboard to the homes, another foot of freeboard, and that helps with our CRS points, which gives insurance discounts to our residents. So that's been a really big drive for us is getting that insurance discount because the insurance, flood insurance is crazy priced right now.
Yeah.
Everybody saw a huge increase, and that is a big concern. Big concern.
So let me ask a question to everybody in the audience, and you can raise your hands, yes or no. How many of you are just really thrilled with your tax base? What you pay in taxes? I mean, really, just really super happy. Well, I had to ask that because
Should be happier than living in St. Petersburg.
there we go. There you go. So the problem that governments always get stuck with, and it's leadership that's required, and this is just the nature of change. I'm 70. I'm not the same as I was before. My wife has allowed me to grow a beard now, as long as it's no longer than that. Anyway, so the phrase always goes, you have to struggle with tomorrow's problems with today's dollars. So do you have trouble when you look at your bottom line and go, we've got to raise more money? And where does that money come from? And I guess we're talking about economic development, and then we're talking about the age-old battle between, well, the height battle we mentioned right now. Everybody knows why Sanibel is the place to be, because they've got a height restriction, and you can't pick up a home for under $5 million, that place. So how are you dealing with that? How do you encourage the economy? And I'll just add one more caveat. I've been here since 1986. We have 4 children. What I love about this area south of Clearwater, I love mom and pop stores. It's like a treasure hunt. Oh, Treasure Island. No, they didn't pay me to say that. But it is. So you get to discover things, and it's wonderful. And then you look at Clearwater Beach, and it's like, holy smokes. You know, somebody's rolling in the dough from someplace because those things are not cheap. So how do you make sure that you have economic growth to continue to pay for these projects that you know you're going to have, and they can't get wished away? And I'm going to start out with you, Mary Beth, and we'll work our way this way on that kind of question.
I would say that we look to our local businesses to help them grow. And the fact that our property, our values are increasing to the rate they're increasing right now, it's crazy. I think that in and of itself, we don't necessarily have to raise the millage rates and whatnot, but I think that in and of itself is probably going to help us some. But I'm not sure how long we're going to be able to continue to keep it at that pace. I really don't have the answers on how we're going to keep up.
Yeah. Tyler?
Anybody?
Well, in all seriousness, I jest about St. Petersburg, but all of our millage rates on the beaches are significantly lower than the city of St. Petersburg because they have much more land mass and population to deal with and piers to pay for. But we are able to keep our tax rate low. I think we do need to have a more open mind towards development because that is how we are going to increase the tax base. We don't need our cities to turn into Clearwater Beach with really high buildings. We also have a height restriction in Treasure Island that nobody plans on changing. Right now, you can only build 5 stories above parking, but we need to have that open mind about taking what is there, increasing the property value so that our residents don't have to bear that burden of what we are going to come to face in the future.
What's worked for us in general is, and I can't thank our staff in Gulfport enough for their diligence and capability with looking for outside funding sources. For instance, dealing with the sewer issues that come along with the fact that so many of us are dealing with, the whole country's dealing with infrastructure that was largely put in, post-World War II, and now all these things like bridges, tunnels, sewer systems are wearing out around the same time. So finding different funding mechanisms, like for us, the state revolving loan fund, so we've been able to work for the last 6 years at a roughly 1% interest rate, refurbishing these sewers so we're not sending back groundwater that's, with our sewage water, paying extra money, extra taxing on the system, finding grants like the Living Shoreline Grant, taking advantage of our Penny for Pinellas money, to tax incremental funding money for our waterfront development district, and just hunting for grants wherever we can find them. So that's been one of the big ones. We've kept our roughly 4 mills ad valorem tax. I believe we're on year number 9 now. With that, kind of seems to be the magic number for us. So that seems to be what's worked for us is really seeking outside dollars, and then of course getting a lot of buy-in from people and trying to explain how important these legacy projects are. Building a new senior center, making your coast resilient so that you're more more protected and can mitigate flooding every time you start getting these tropical systems coming through. Fixing infrastructure and roads. So all these things that have to be funded. Luckily, most people seem to understand this, whether no one's happy about paying taxes, period. I know they're not happy with, as us being a St. Petersburg water customer, having to raise our rates in conjunction with St. Pete raising their rates. We have to be, it's not our choice. It's easy to say, well, we have to do what they do, but, people don't like to pay extra money. But I think for the most part, I got to say that people who are rational and understanding and look into the problem understand that spending money now to ensure that we've got a good quality of life for ourselves later, most people seem to be pretty much down with that, so.
John?
That's a big challenge for us. Our millage rate is 2.75. That's one of the lowest. I think we're the third lowest in the county. But we've got to generate revenue, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. They move to Paradise and sort of expect us to raise the drawbridge and not let anyone else in. But it doesn't work that way. You've got to generate revenue. We just spent almost $13 million last year on a road and storm sewer project in one of our neighborhoods. We've got another one coming up this year that's going to be over $7.5 million. We've got the parking lot at Johns Pass Village that will be, I don't have a figure on that, but there are so many things that need to be done. And I want residents to realize that the only way, if you're not generating revenue, the only other way to pay for things is to raise your ad valorem taxes. Now, nobody wants their taxes raised. I don't want my taxes raised. So I want to work towards being able to have new businesses come in and development come in, and not crazy development, but we've got people that are fighting a hotel now. They're talking 7 stories and a parking garage across the street, and building new retail with the parking garage. Now, there's no healthcare facility in Treasure Island or in the Redington Beach. That retail area that they're wanting to build in conjunction with the hotel, there are 2 different healthcare facilities that want to come in there and bring healthcare to the beaches. It's going to help the residents of 3 cities, and it's going to help our huge tourist population that we have in the winter. And yet people can't wrap their hands around this and understand what we're trying to do. And one of the hardest things we have, I think all of us as mayors, is to try to get residents to understand, look, we live here too, and we're looking out for the best. We're looking out for our residents. That's our job. And we're not doing things, to try to make ourselves with a fatter pocketbook or whatever. I mean, none of us makes a fortune up here other than Al Johnson.
Whoa.
I think I know who does better than I do.
So
it's pretty much everybody. So
no, really, it's a labor of love is what I'm saying. And all of us are looking out for what's best for our community. And nobody, I don't like the traffic, but it goes with the territory. Like I said earlier, particularly to the newcomers, if you bought here and you don't like the traffic, you probably bought in the wrong area. Madeira Beach is the gateway to the mainland. They've built a new Walmart over there. We've got a VA hospital. We've got the new Seminole Town Center and Home Depot, and Tyrone Mall has been expanded. 150th Avenue is how people get off of Barrier Island. And so although our population has actually dropped, our traffic is increasing because of the Redingtons and because of Treasure Island and all the tourists coming and going from the barrier island. And Johns Pass Village has grown tremendously as far as popularity. It's the #1 tourist destination in the county. But we've got to protect that. And part of what we're trying to put through right now is to be able to rebuild Johns Pass Village in the event of, I'm sure most everyone has been down there. It's all wooden structures and they're one against the other. And if we had a fire down there or if we have a bad storm hit, Johns Pass Village gets wiped out. With that, a lot of our revenue, the parking revenue that's so good to this city, gets wiped out because we can't rebuild. That's why we're trying to redo things right now in our ordinances, and we're being fought right and left, and people are fighting things that they really don't know what they're fighting. They don't understand what they're fighting. That's a big problem for us.
Okay, Alan, since you're the richest guy up there, you know.
Yeah, just to that point, John, I did find out that, back the last time our commission got a raise, which with us has to be a referendum, we can't raise our own salaries, was they doubled it. They all got a double, 100% increase in their salaries, and that was in 1990. And that's the last time it was changed, so they give you an idea where we are. The thing that, and you brought it up as well, John, is that we went through, one of the reasons I'm in this position, I think, is we went through a pretty agonizing fight over our comprehensive plan that started back in 05, 06, and extended right on till I think it was finally out of court and adopted sometime around 2015 or 16. Which one of the things that we did, which was very smart, is part of that settlement was a moratorium on building any multifamily house. You could build a private single-family residence, but you couldn't build a duplex, much less a condo or a hotel. And that moratorium went in place in, I believe, in 2016. And with the completion of the sewer system upgrade that we started in October of 20, October of 20. It's been a 1.5-year program, and now we're at the point where the moratorium's been lifted. We're fortunate in that our comprehensive plan takes and makes 24 different character districts on a 2.25 square mile piece of sand. So it's pretty intense. There's certain things you can do in each one of those districts and a lot of things you cannot do. If, for instance, we're not going to end up being a sand key because you can't build any condo higher than 6 stories. That's it. And we're not going to be a Clearwater Beach either, because you only in a small section of the city on the beach can you build anything that's taller than that. It's limited to 12 stories, and it has to be a hotel. It cannot be a condominium. So we've got some very strict rules on that. And it also includes things like larger sidewalks for people to do, move by foot power. We've got so many restrictions on that stuff because my attitude's always been, we can't fight what's going to happen. The only thing we can do is hopefully control it so that we get something we like. Money's going to drive everything. And I don't want to see all our mom and pops go away. I don't want to see our small shops go away. What we're doing is we're trying to walk this balancing act where it's a fine line between being a little Gulf Coast beach town and being an internationally known resort destination. And those are the things that we're trying to balance, and I want to keep them both, because that's the only industry we have. And it is one of those things that brings me to the beach, but I want our town feel. I don't want to change the character of the place. And that's a long putt, as they say in golf. So.
David.
Well, in Redington Beach, our millage rate is 1.81. We're a completely residential town, so our income comes from the ad valorem taxes. Our budget is $2.3 million. But what we do have is an incredible finance committee that's made up of our residents, our best and brightest, who do an amazing job keeping us living within our means. We haven't changed our millage rate in a dozen years or so, and we haven't carried any debt in about 15 years. So getting your residents involved in caring and giving a stake that's where what really helps our situation.
So I'm going to change this up just a little bit. I don't know, how many of you you think you're capable, and this is not to mean a dig, because I'm the kind of guy that I go, what do I do with my computer? I call my 6th grade grandson to tell me how to run the computer. So if you'd like to submit a question, that's the way you can do it up there. But I'm going to go the little old school. You got a question you want to ask, write it on a piece of paper, stick it down to the end of the here. And Sam, if you can run, I'm going to have them scribble their questions over here if they can't figure out how to do that, because we only have like 3 or 4 questions here, and we want to get more of your questions, and rather than have you figure out, oh, the technology is going to scare me away, I'd rather get the question, just put it up here on a piece of paper, and then we'll try to get it that way. So, because I want to have, you know, you're here because you're interested, and if there are questions that we can put to this panel, I'd like to be able to do that too, so we get some real honest feedback from the people that actually have to live here. We haven't mentioned the big H, which I hate to mention it because hurricanes are real, and we've been very, very fortunate. And I will take on the role of several of my Bay News 9 meteorologists who say, no year is more likely to have storms than the year before, because they always say, you're not looking at history, so don't give me this, oh, we haven't been hit before in 100 years, so the time is up. It doesn't quite go that way, but it's something that has to be really realistically looked at, and you have to make plans. So I'm just curious, if a percentage-wise, maybe you don't even know this, in your planning process, mayors, what portion of your planning do you have to, I mean, do you put away a reserve fund? This is the in case we all get wiped off the face of the earth fund, or do you just, I don't want to say you ignore it, but you do the best you can and cross your fingers like all the rest of us do? And David, I'm going to start with you and we'll move down the line.
Yes, we were prepared for that. We have money set aside in case we were wiped out, we can rebuild and start over again.
Okay, Alan? Yes, in fact, I spent 5 years on a budget and finance committee before I got elected. And one thing, I remember when I got on in 2012, our reserves for disasters like that ran about 12% of our annual operating budget. Right now, we're at 50% and we're hovering there. That was our target. So the way I look at it is, you know, I don't care what your budget is. Certainly the hurricane coming in off the Gulf doesn't care. It's going to wipe you out, and you've got to find a way to, you know, pay the bills in the meantime, because in my experience has been FEMA reimburses you about 2 to 3 years after you place the claim. So, yeah, we're at a good place now. We've decided as a policy that we're going to stay at a 50% cushion and try and just hover around that thing, and we're doing a good job of doing that.
Mm-hmm. John, same thing.
We're upwards over 50%, but we've got more things to deal with. There are more than one hurricanes in the room, and it's called red tide,
right?
And it's called COVID, both of which hit the beaches very hard because we're a tourist destination. So when we lose the ability to have the tourists out here parking in our parking lots and paying, Madeira Beach makes like over $2 million a year on parking fees. So when we're hit with those things, financially it hits a small town very hard. So yeah, we keep a lot in reserve for disasters, and there's more disasters than just hurricanes.
Yeah. Sam, same thing.
Yeah, we keep about 20% in our unassigned funds, and it can range a little lower, a little higher. And that money, honestly, is if we were to get the kind of storm that we're talking about, like a Harvey or a Michael, that wouldn't cover a fraction of rebuilding. That money is actually for us to get us through in the meantime, so that we can pay our people, that we can keep services operating as best we can. We keep outside contractors, on contract with us for when it comes for debris cleanup and all these things, because the emergency response stuff has to happen before anything gets back to normal. So
right.
The reserves that we keep in those unassigned funds are, we don't have any illusion that that's going to rebuild our city. That's just got to get us through that gap, and so we can get people through in the meantime and keep people safe, keep services up, and keep our employees paid while they do that work.
Tyler, same thing with you?
Absolutely, and we have reserves, but we also, in our budget every year, I believe we have $2 million set aside specifically for beach emergency. So if there was something that we needed to do very quickly to restore specifically the sand on our beach, we would be able to do that. And I think it's that issue that you bring up is makes it even more important to do these resiliency projects like we've been talking about with our infrastructure, our stormwater, our sewer system, building our homes up past the floodplain, redeveloping older hotels and properties into newer properties that comply with the Florida Building Code that take into account being able to withstand a hurricane. So the more, I love the charm of our old 1970s hotels and motels on the beach, but they won't be there if a hurricane hits, a direct hit on our beaches. Whereas some of the newer hotels that are all concrete may withstand a hurricane like that and put us in a better situation to recover from an event like that if it were to happen. So I think that's another reason to have an open mind about redevelopment.
Right. Mary Beth?
I think if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I would have said we were in really good shape. But with the cost of plywood being $80 a sheet to rebuild, I'm not sure we're in as good a shape as we were 2 years ago. I mean, labor is almost impossible to find. And
Yep.
so we do have the money, but not in today's dollars, probably.
Okay. Now let's get to some of the questions we've got here. And some of these are real specific, so that you won't all have to answer them. So here was one. How much did it cost to remove the 22 boats in Madeira, and who paid for it?
Well, that was taken care of by the county, and the state, I think, also chipped in on that. And dollar figure wise, because we were not involved, I don't know how much it cost per boat.
I believe that was $3,000 to $5,000 per boat.
Okay. Another question. What penny for Pinellas projects are slated in the next few years?
Is this general or?
Just anybody, yeah, if anybody knows any projects we got in the loop.
Well, right now,
Go right ahead, the mayor will.
we are with the Reddingtons. We're all working together on a project to underground all the utilities on the west side of Gulf Boulevard to get rid of all those poles and all those wires.
Oh, that's been great.
Everything
Okay,
underground.
super.
Yeah, we completed the east side, pretty much. We're waiting for them to be pulled down, but we're very anxious to get the west side completed
First
as
half of
well.
our project, and now the second half is the west side, so be careful when you're riding your bike. There's a lot of construction down there.
The cars that turned across, they were the ones to blame, not me. I look like a Christmas tree when I'm out there riding out. Yeah, Alan?
One thing, yeah, the undergrounding of the utilities is a big thing, and that's paid with penny money, but it's penny 3 and penny 4, 3 being from 2010 to 20. So they waited, county waited till the end of that period to give us the money for that. And it was, for us, it was about 40% of what we need to do the whole Gulf Boulevard area. And, but one thing that the county did do, which was really beneficial for us, was they took the penny 4 money, which is going on now for the next 10 years, and they front-end loaded it in percentages so that we'll get all the money by, I think it's 2024 or 25. I think it's in the 4 or 5 years, we'll get all they expect to get for the 10-year period. So now we're going forward with our whole project, which in our case, they did it by the amount of Gulf Boulevard that you own. And we ended up with, I think it was about $11 million, 11 or 12 million to do the whole thing. And we're gonna, when we get to the end of what we've been given so far, we'll go ahead and we'll float a loan if we have to, or take it out of reserves to do the rest so that we can continue the project, because it's a lot cheaper than starting and stopping.
Oh, yeah. Anybody else on Natalie?
We're doing the same thing with our pennies for Pinellas money, and we're actually piggybacking on to the Reddingtons with the contractors. So we're going to go ahead and finish up Gulf Boulevard this year. And if we have to take money out of general funds to finish it up, we'll do that, and then just replace the general funds with the pennies for Pinellas money.
Okay.
The last few years, we've done a couple good environmental projects. We've got some detention ponds we put in near our marina to keep more of the nutrients and contaminants from going and making it into the bay. So there's a series of baffle boxes, a couple of ponds, so volatiles can get out, solids get caught, all that stuff can settle down to the bottom before it reaches the Bogosiega Bay. We're always putting it toward things like resurfacing our streets. Had a significant amount that went toward working on our downtown by the waterfront, putting in some permeable pavers in our beach parking lot to allow water to percolate downward, reducing runoff. So stormwater, sewers, streets, the usual infrastructure stuff. So we don't know what we're going to do this year because our budget will come out in October, but we're always trying to find something that's going to be a lasting benefit. It's kind of been our goal.
Tyler?
Yeah, this year we had several Penny for Pinellas projects in our budget. Some of the big ones were like I mentioned, our Treasure Bay Golf Course. We had to repave that parking lot. We have some money set forth in Penny for Pinellas to replace some of our seawalls in the city. We do have a lot of city-owned seawalls on our city facilities. Some investment in our police cars and our the equipment that's in the police cars. We are one of the only beach towns that still have our own police department, so there's a significant investment that comes from Penny for Pinellas for our police department.
Mary Beth?
Our penny money is definitely slated just for undergrounding, and we're gonna have to kick in a little more than what Penny's covering to complete it.
Okay, here's another one. American Recovery Funds. Will any of you be getting any financial effect as a result of those funds when they're doled out eventually? Anybody?
I'll go ahead and jump in. We absolutely will be getting some of those. We've already used some of that funding. We had a project that was actually, I got to give a great deal of credit to my finance director, Cheryl Hannafin in Gulfport. We did a lot of brainstorming about how we could use some of that money because, of course, as you all know, there was a whole lot of pretty tight restrictions on how you could use it. So one of the ways that we figured out was we did a voucher program right around the holidays where residents got a $50 voucher. They had to demonstrate that they, answer a series of questions, demonstrate that you had a COVID impact, and frankly, who didn't. And then those vouchers were good at participating businesses in Gulfport. So that was one of our methods of getting money into people's pockets for the hardships that they'd gone through, but it was also putting it back into our businesses. Ended up being about $400,000. So that's just one of the ways that we used that money. I mean, we're going to be using that money to recover lost revenue from 2021. We're going to be using that going forward for some of the projects in this upcoming budget year. But that was one of the ways that I thought was a really nice way to put something back directly to people and help our small businesses get by at the same time by pumping some money directly into their pockets over a 2-month period.
Sure, Tyler?
Again, it comes back to infrastructure. That was one of the categories that you were allowed to use that funding for. So while we did use some funding for during the thick of the pandemic, bolstering up with masks and hand sanitizer and PPE for our city staff, the really big chunk of it, we're putting $3 million in funding towards that master pump station reconstruction that I mentioned, which is going to be a $6 million project. So half of it will be covered by those funds from the American Rescue Plan.
Okay. We have another question here about mass transit. What is the transit situation out here in terms of mass transit? I mean, listen, I'm from cities where they actually had mass transit. And I'm saying that figuratively. So, and along the traffic thing, because the traffic is so bad, for people like me that ride bikes and all those kind of things, how do we make sure that we don't have kind of the mess that Tampa now has because they got free scooters for everybody? And now everybody's stealing the scooters that are ending up in the river or they're getting hit. So what are the plans for any of your communities as far as keeping the roads safe, being that Pinellas County is one of the number one, not worse than Orlando, but is one of the most dangerous counties for pedestrians that are walking?
Yeah. I could take that first. We just enacted a microtransit ordinance which addressed the scooter issue and electric bikes on the beach and all that kind of stuff. So that's the most recent thing we've done. Right now we're closing in on about 2.5 years since we started our own transit system. Pinellas County was running the trolley, the Central Avenue trolley, all the way down around Paso Grill. And what we did, and it was 2 years ago, December, was we brought in a company called Freebie. And it's a free Uber type setup. We pay a flat fee to them. They're not allowed to take tips. And people can bring up the app on their phone and get picked up at their house and within the certain area of the city that they can operate in. And we've expanded that in 3 or 4 different levels. So now everything from Corey Causeway, which comes over onto 75th Avenue, all the way down to the tip of Paso Grill is handled by them. We do still have PSTA going as far south as the middle of the island down at 44th Avenue, but and that's where the bus rapid transit that's coming in is actually going to terminate. It'll turn around there and go back. What we've been paying for this because of the money we saved from PSTA. Every time we took a portion of the island over, we saved money, so we were actually making money on giving the whole thing over to this freebie, and it's a very environmental setup too. It's all electric carts. They're small. They run what they call a fixed flexible route. So they go a certain loop, but then somebody pulls them up on an app and calls them, they'll come get them. And so it's really great. People love it. And I get people pounding on the north end of the beach where we don't have it saying, when's it coming here? And one thing that I think I like to look at it is we need a connection, and maybe the BRT is going to do that, to downtown St. Pete. And I think I look at us a lot like you would Key West. You don't take a huge bus, go all the way down the Keys, and ride around Key West with it. You come down there, you drop the people off, and then you get the heck out of Dodge. You let them take local transit, and that's what we're trying to do there. We do need the connection. I'm not against mass transit, but ours, I think, is now being right-sized to what our city really needs.
Other gentlemen, any comments?
Yeah, I think all we have in Treasure Island is the beach trolley that runs up and down Gulf Boulevard. It comes through Treasure Island, but I really like the approach that St. Pete Beach has taken with, like Mayor Johnson just said, drop off and then we'll take it from there. And I think that freebie model is very enticing. We have free beach ride all up and down the beaches with the vans that you can call, but I think something a little bit more systematic like freebie would be wonderful.
Full disclosure, we got to tell them we work together a good bit, and I think you share our transportation and parking director
Yes,
with
we
us.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Okay, full disclosure. Here's another one. Do you think Sunstar is a good investment when you have your own fire rescue that always shows up before Sunstar even arrives? This is almost a county issue, but okay.
No, but one of the things there is that fire rescue isn't allowed to take somebody to the hospital.
No transport, right?
Yeah, they can't transport. So
a lot of people don't know
they
that.
show up and triage somebody, and they wait for the ambulance to show up. So
Yeah, and then if they do transport, then we don't have the fire department here locally to take care of other emergencies. What we've talked about doing is getting a quick response vehicle so that we're not running $1 million fire truck down the beach for someone that cut their foot on a shell. You know, those are the things we've got to look at.
We've benefited greatly from having our own police and emergency services. So we've got an ambulance in Gulfport, but I've greatly appreciated that partnership with our immediate next door communities, South Pasadena and St. Petersburg. Whoever's free comes, and that's worked out great. Our fire chief really likes it. Our EMTs and paramedics like it. So, I mean, I'm always happier to see one of our city ambulances at a scene as opposed to a Sunstar, but that's just because I appreciate the autonomy of our cities and the service they provide.
Right, right.
Yeah, and our fire department's able to respond quicker because they're right in the community. But then, like Mayor Hendricks said, once Sunstar gets there, we can have our firemen back at the station and ready to respond.
Alex, excuse me, can I mention one more thing? And that is, we just got a fire boat. It's right out here on a lift, actually, because last year, the Madeira Beach Fire Department made, I think, 80 water rescues, more than anyone in the county.
Oh, boy.
Right here. A lot of that is because of the stress that Johns Pass has on it with the currents and where that sand has filled in on the north side. People are using that for a beach, and their kids are getting out in the water, and the currents are very strong out there. So a lot of issues in Madeira Beach kind of funnel towards Johns Pass and what we've got going on there. Thank you.
All right. We briefly touched on it, and for people that, I've been here since 1986, so I've seen a lot of changes that I mentioned earlier. And Clearwater Beach, North Clearwater, has always had this battle back and forth. I remember that my daughter and her husband, who, by the way, designed this beautiful facility, Jason Jensen Wanamaker, which is just spectacular. I saw these plans before they did. And I didn't know how they were going to pull it off, but man, they did it in a spectacular way. rental properties. How, is there ever going to be any short-term rental properties? Because that was the question would ask for Gulfport in particular. Are they going to be changing any things, especially for Airbnb? Are the residents resisting enough to create an issue for owners?
Well, that is, like we mentioned earlier, the hot button issue in our town. Being a residential community, we don't want to lose that residential, that feel, that family nature. We just had a referendum in March, whether we wanted to ask our residents, since it's such an issue, do you support our current ordinance prohibiting short-term rentals? That came back 86% to 14. So that's loud and clear that we do not want to have short-term
Define
rentals.
short-term rental.
Short-term, anything, well, in our ordinances, there are no rentals under 6 months.
Oh,
So
okay.
short-term rentals being an Airbnb, a VRBO, something for the weekend or the week.
Wow, that surprises me. Maybe it's been so long since I've rented anything.
Every
Well,
city
if you live
yeah.
next to one, then
Yeah.
you will
Oh, no,
understand.
no,
yes.
I knew the party thing, yeah.
Every city has a different definition of what short-term rental is and what restrictions are in place. And we've actually been kind of frozen in time in what our ordinances are, because I think, was it in 2011?
Yes.
The legislature said, if you change your ordinance on short-term rentals at all, one word, it's null and void. So we have stuck with our ordinance just because it's all that we have that we can protect from Airbnbs going rampant. I think they do play a good part in the economy and a good alternative to hotels, but we have to be careful that they're not invading our neighborhoods and disrupting the peace and quiet of our residents' lives. So that's something that I think they've tried to address in the legislature, but they've failed to do it. We fortunately have been able to fight down or prevent them from passing legislation that takes our ability to manage that completely away. And we're working with them as cities to hopefully pass legislation that will allow us to at least alter our ordinances a little bit and either make them less restrictive and modernize them, allow us to at least regulate them in some way, shape, or form to help our residents with complying with them and dealing with having them in their neighborhoods. Right now, we can't do anything. Our hands are tied. So I'm sure Representative Cheney would love to hear your thoughts on what you want in your neighborhoods.
But, you know, we have a similar problem, and it's back in 2004 that we enacted an ordinance that limited the residential rentals to 30 days minimum. And before that, it was, I think it was 6 months or something, you know, really long. But the same problem. I mean, there's things in that ordinance we'd love to change, but if you don't have that ordinance and it wasn't enacted before the law in 2011, you've got no minimum. You can't enforce a minimum. And, you know, like I always look at it, if somebody comes in and buys a house and they live in Timbuktu somewhere, and they bought it as a, you know, as an investment for appreciation and also to rent it to cover the costs. And they don't live here. They don't care what goes on really, within reason. But on either side of them, you got residences, you know, and these people are your constituents. And you say, okay, these people, you're ruining their quality of life to satisfy somebody who's an out-of-town investor. And, you know, who are you working for? You know, we're working for the people who live there. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd love to see us have free reign to limit that stuff. Just a point, though, on Airbnb and VRBO, those are just advertising platforms. I know the Tradewinds advertises on, I think it's on VRBO. So there's one of our hotels that actually advertises on it.
Yeah, Sam?
And we had similar good luck. We had an ordinance already in place that also limited that. It defined short-term rentals less than 30 days. So, and again, changing so much as a comma or a semicolon in that, you lose your ability. So that's worked well for us because anytime we've had the discussion, and again, one of those home rule issues, like you said, we couldn't adapt that if we want to right now, which is one of the problems. But I'm glad that it was in place because of most of Gulfport, except for a few blocks downtown, is more residential. And so this keeps, but believe me, there's plenty of Airbnbs in Gulfport.
Yeah.
But the way it works is, it's going to sound a little Mayberry when I describe it, but if people are doing an Airbnb in Gulfport, they're going to be real good about who they get in there, because being complaint driven, we're not out hunting Airbnbs all the time. But if somebody gets in there and starts making a problem for the neighbors, then they're going to hear about it, and then somebody's going to be in trouble. So it's kind of worked out, not being able to change that ordinance, being a little self-governing just through people trying to be good neighbors and trying to not get in trouble.
But even having an ordinance on the books, it's extremely difficult to enforce that ordinance because you have to build a case against someone who's violating it, and there's not really much evidence you can gather to really prove that someone's running a short-term rental out of there. And in Treasure Island, we don't have a length restriction. Ours is a frequency. So in certain parts of the city, you can only change over the occupancy of the residents 3 times per year, and in some places it's only 5 times per year. So you could do 5 weekends and then have the rest of the year be someone living there the whole time, and that would be fine. Or you can do 5 shorter or longer length rentals. So it's different for every city.
You know, I had a long discussion back a few years ago, I think 4 years ago, with Senator Brandis over there, and he had a proposed bill at the time that had all kinds of restrictions, and that's when we had the discussion about who you're working for.
Right.
And one of the things I told him was, I said, you know, you've got things in this that I like. You know, you're going to license them at the state. You're going to make them post certain restrictions. You're going to inspect them twice a year. I said, and you're going to pay for that. I love it, you know, because that way I'll find them.
Yeah.
But as far as location, frequency, and duration of rentals, that's my job.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we are slowly winding down our program. And gentlemen, I'm going to give you just a couple seconds to collect your thoughts. I'm going to have you do just kind of a final statement, if you would, to the people that have gathered here. First of all, thank you so much for showing up. I hope we were able to get some of the questions. Could not get to all of them, but I hope we got to most of the pertinent ones. And, you know, whenever I do anything with any public or elected officials, I have to honestly say that elected officials don't do this because they love to get pats on their back. Because running a campaign is very, very difficult. You're putting your life on the line in many ways, especially if you're talking about higher offices, but even for offices here. And you hardly ever get thanked, which is too bad, because these people really do try to be servants. Nobody, well, forget Washington, maybe, I don't know. Nobody really getting rich off of local government in terms of when they are offering their time. So I'd like for our audience here just to give a round of applause for our mayors that have joined us here tonight and thank them. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to try to do your best, and I think you always have. So Tyler, I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to give you a last closing statement, and then we'll call it quits. Tyler, go ahead.
Sure. Well, since it is called the State of the Beaches, I did just want to slip in there. The state of Treasure Island is strong. But in all seriousness, I think we are thriving. We have a great beach community. We have great residents, great businesses. We have a great new city manager, and together we are steering the city forward and trying to keep in mind what we have, not just down the road in 1-2 years, but what is ahead of us for 30, 50, 80 years down the road. So that's really my focus.
That's great. Sam?
I'd like to encourage you to come to Gulfport sometime. I know we've got all the beach communities up here, but I got to give a shout out for our bay communities. If you ever want to come down there, we're a very bikeable city. You can get to us right off the trail. We've got new connectors that'll take you all the way down to Maximo and back out toward the beaches. If you feel like riding a bike and not contributing to our growing parking problem, which is a sign of your popularity, which has its ups and downs now, but I'm very happy to be involved in this. Thanks to my SPC colleagues and Mr. Rubin for putting this on, you, Mr. Rochelle, and all you gentlemen for the job you do. And I appreciate it. It's been
So
nice
did
being here with
you get the dock rebuilt after the fireworks thing?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, we did.
I was out in the water. It was spectacular when it went off. Fireworks went off and burned up part of the dock, but
It did.
my grandkids in the boat, they're going, "Wow, Grandpa, that is so awesome." Is that supposed to happen that way? I
No, it was
don't
not.
think so. Anyway, a little embarrassment there. Whoops. John, go ahead.
Madeira Beach, it's our 75th birthday this year. So, older than I am.
Not by much.
So not by much. Thanks, Al. We've got a lot of things going on in Madeira Beach. We're trying to always have something going on in Madeira Beach. But on the 7th, May 7th, We're going to have a grouper gala. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a really good Jimmy Buffett band out there, tribute band, not Jimmy himself. But
He doesn't sound so good anymore. I heard him last year.
And a grouper dinner, and of course, we've got Final Friday now down at Johns Pass Village. That's every month. A lot of things going on. Madeira Beach is so far still on the move. Hopefully, we keep moving forward and generating revenue so these residents can keep that millage rate low. Thank you.
Alan?
Yes, I think I agree with everything I've heard so far. One thing that has not been said is that one thing I tell people all the time, we do occasionally get thanked for doing something. And to me, it's we don't do anything, none of us up here. It's the staffs that work for us.
That's true.
It's the city managers and their directors and the guys that are out there, chopping bushes and raking up our parks and stuff. So, thank them when you see them. I mean, they did. We don't do anything except take the brunt of the things and then just pass on what we need to have done. They make us look like heroes, and thankfully, I'm blessed to have a commission and a city staff and a city manager that just do that continually. So, we're just thankful as heck. I'm thankful as heck to have this job because I've got the support I need.
Great. Dave?
Right. Well, in Redington Beach, we have an amazing residential community, and Sam, you alluded to earlier Mayberry-ish. Well, we're a very small town, and we are just like Mayberry, where everybody knows everybody. We have a lot of socials. We get a lot of business done on the beach at sunset. So I do this because I love our little town, and I want to make sure it stays that way. I also wanted to mention for the first time ever now, because of Representative Linda Cheney, our town has an appropriations bill sitting on the desk of the governor waiting for his signature. So we're on the map now.
Great. Is he going to sign it?
Yes, that's the next part, Linda.
We're hoping.
Right, he better, okay. Get your letter writing campaign out quick. Well, we want to thank you again on behalf of the Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. I've done a lot of stuff with Kimberly, just to step back a little bit. She used to be one of my producers back at Bay News 9. And I'm talking about an associate producer. And then she got all smart and went to law school and did all these incredible things. And she's just been a wonderful person to work with at the Strategic Policy Institute. I knew Bill Young very, very well, and always loved and enjoyed working with him. He was so good with the money. You thought he was a magician because he knew how to squeeze DC out of every dime that he possibly could for the Tampa Bay area. And we're very, very grateful for that. And there are lots of ways that you can watch this. This will be pre-recorded. You'll be able to watch it. You can go to Facebook for SB Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. Also Instagram, YouTube, website. All that stuff is on the screen. spc.isps. That's SPISPISPS. That's how you say it. Anyway, I'm Al Rochelle. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, and we're going to have a little bit of a reception off to the side there as well. So thank you for coming out and being involved with your city government.
Thank you, guys.